Cavalcade is a black and white movie from 1933 that also picked up the Best Picture Oscar. Yes, one of the first Best Picture Oscar winners. This is the era really where the talkies had kind of just, you know, we got the first talking picture in, was it 1927, I think it was, with the jazz singer. But yeah, so 1933, still early days with regards to talkies. I didn't dislike it. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm ever going to watch it again though. Let's put it that way. I watched this film on YouTube. It is available on YouTube. I couldn't seem to find it on DVD anywhere, so I was very thankful that it was on YouTube, quite frankly. So whoever uploaded that, thank you. The other great thing about YouTube is that it allows you to watch movies at a higher speed. This film is just short of 2 hours long. I watched it at 1.25, you know, so a quarter speed extra. I know a lot of people are probably saying like, it's a big no-no, you can't do that. But honestly, the first half hour of the film, I watched it at the regular speed, and it was dull. It was really dull. And I gotta say, just flipping that up a notch, just letting it go a little bit faster, it did help. It improved. It got there faster. My first thoughts when I came away from this was Downton Abbey. I look at what they did with Downton Abbey, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is the first version of that, isn't it? You know, the whole upstairs, downstairs thing. You got a bunch of rich people, and then you've got the servants, and it follows them across several, seasons of television. This does it in a movie. So you start with this rich family, and the downstairs you've got the servants who work for them, and they all kind of mingle together. They seem quite friendly with one another. But yeah, the Boer War happens. So that was, at the turn of the century, in 1900, you had the Boer War, and the men had to go off to fight. And when they come back, it creates this kind of separation where the servants, the servant family go their separate way. They get their own home, their own family business. They buy a pub, and the rich family, they carry on without their servants, just as doing their thing. And we see these two families as they go through the sinking of the Titanic, the First World War, and various other things. Now, one of the problems is that it does feel very snapshotty. It's just like, oh, look, this period of history. Oh, look, now this period of history. Oh, and now we're here. And it's like, yeah, you know where it's leading. Inevitably they are going to get to the First World War. I was surprised that it had the, dare I say, courage, the balls to just end characters in certain situations where, okay, it looks like we're going to follow them. No, okay, all right, they've served their purpose. They died on the Titanic, or we lost them during that war. It's interesting as a snapshot of the early 20th century, I think. Once it kind of gets going, once the Boer War stuff happens and the two families separate, I start to get into it a little bit more, because the difference between the two classes becomes more obvious, because we see where the lower class are living, we see where the servants go to live compared with where they were when they were still with the rich family. And that makes it a bit more interesting to me, and where they end up. It also makes me slightly angry, and I don't know if that was writer Noel Coward's kind of one of the points he was trying to make, maybe, is that the upper class, yes, they do face struggles, and I think one of the things the film is saying is that it doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, you will face struggles, you will face trials and tribulations. But I do think that it also ends with the upper class people kind of being the the moral kind of guiding light, looking to a brighter future despite what they've been through, and we don't really get that with the lower class. Instead, they just, well, certainly one of them just ends up in like working in some dive of a bar as a dancer, and you kind of think, yeah, there's probably only one place she's going to end up, to be perfectly honest. And that's either a commentary on class structure, on the fact that the rich get, if not richer, they certainly don't get poorer, but the poor certainly do get poorer. So yeah, there's stuff in there with regards to social commentary and whatnot. I just find it a bit too slow, a bit too plodding, a bit too episodic. It'd be very easy to separate into chapters, and we never stick with this particular character long enough. It's like a lot of little mini movies all stuck together that create a bigger picture, which is all fine. So it's a bit disjointed in that respect. The acting is quite atrocious for me personally. It feels like theatre acting. And again, I think that is a result of it still being in that period of the early talkies. They hadn't quite ironed out yet the nuances of film acting versus theatre acting and silent movie acting. You look at silent movies, they had to express everything through movement, through facial expression. So it made sense to, if you will, overact. But as soon as they were able to talk, a lot of actors lost careers once the talkies came around, because as soon as their voices came out, you're like, oh, that ain't gonna cut it on screen. If you watch Singing in the Rain, they play that up quite amusingly, it's got to be said. But I think, yeah, here it still feels like they're in that phase of not quite knowing how to tone down the theatrics, and it's probably theatre actors kind of moving into film, and yeah, the subtlety just isn't there. There's no really subtle performances here. Production value wise, it's quite impressive. There's a lot on screen in certain cases that I wouldn't expect to see on screen given the age of the film. Like scenes when ships are pulling out of harbours where they've clearly just brought in thousands of extras. It's quite impressive. I think as well, the direction here, the blocking, the camera movements, I would say is quite on point. While the performances weren't there yet with regards to talking pictures, I think director Frank Lloyd really handles the blocking of the actors very well, positioning of the actors and the camera. Like there's times where I notice him, how he moves the camera, very subtle movement, and in that one subtle movement, the composition of the shot has completely changed. And it's very Spielbergian. You can see how Spielberg took a lot of his techniques from a lot of what Frank Lloyd is doing here. There's a lot of crane shots in this as well. A lot, when we're in the nightclubs, it's not just like when I looked at the Great Ziegfeld, these song and dance numbers were being like put on, and it's just this static camera looking at a stage, and I'm like, they're not doing anything there. Whereas what Frank Lloyd is doing here in 1933, a film that precedes the Great Ziegfeld, he's getting the camera on cranes, he's moving it with the crane, he's moving it over the people, and it feels visually more interesting, than a film that came later that had a lot more at its disposal, I would say. So yeah, it's not a film I'm ever going to watch again, but with regards to its place in Hollywood history, I'm glad I've watched it. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the film. What are yours? If you've seen Cavalcade, let me know down in the comments what you think about it. Is it a worthy Best Picture Oscar winner? Thank you for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.